Oh, happy day. I am Jen Yates. You're locked on to Jyneration Nation, LRS102.com, the Walrus, broadcasting live from the Launch Louisville studios. And I'm always pumped because today I have Todd Hildreth in the studios. How are you doing, Todd?
I am doing wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming down. We were just talking about King Kong, and we're going to get into all that. But first, I want you to tell listeners, do you go back with LRS at all?
You know, this is the first time that I have ever been in the studios of WLRS. I
really
did a lot of listening, back in the day, but no, I never was able to get behind the microphone.
Well, when did you first start listening to LRS? When did you become aware of the Walrus?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm sure we're looking at high school. We're looking back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, so that's cool. That's probably, we've been around since 1964.
Yes.
Yeah, and then, of course, it went under there for a little while, but mostly was Louisville's premier rock station for many years, yes. And we're bringing LRS Fest back this year. October 5th, you can attend that.
October 5th.
Yes, and it's going to be at the Brown-Forman Amphitheater. We just got the new posters yesterday, so you're going to start to see them all over town.
Very nice.
Yeah. A lot of people have a lot of memories with LRS Fest and attending LRS Fests over the years. And then, of course, we're talking about possibly bringing back the homemade records because, LRS did some real cool things back in the day.
I totally remember the homemade records.
Yeah, and we've got one right here. Actually had John Gage in yesterday on the show, and he was on the first LRS record.
Very nice.
On a song called E Minor Blues, and we spun it, and the song still holds up. I mean, it's an incredible song.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Yeah, and he talked about all the experience of recording that and the process. They put them on vinyls, and then the first one here had the we don't know what kind of pie it is, but it looks like some sort of pie. It's Jenny Hartman holding the pie.
I remember. Oh my gosh, I totally remember that cover.
And it's got on the back, this is the one that John Gage was on, but it also has got, you got to wait for that Chicken Bada Cool and all kinds of interesting bands on here with interesting songs. And the whole thing is amazing if you've listened to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you were talking a little bit about King Kong.
Yeah.
Right? You were in that band, right?
Yeah.
And you said something about...
the LRS Fest.
Yeah, LRS Fest.
Got going again. I think we played at the very first one down there on the Belvedere.
Wow, that's super cool. What year was that, do you know?
Just a couple of years ago.
Oh, really? Okay, sweet. So, Todd, let's start out by telling listeners a little bit about yourself. Did you grow up here in Louisville?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and how did you get your start in music?
Well, I had around the time I was about 9 years old, I had got the idea that I wanted to play a musical instrument. I wanted to start playing music, and so it was time to decide, what kind of instrument I wanted to play. And and I knew folks who played the piano, and I knew folks who played the guitar. But at that point, I wasn't interested in doing the same things. And my folks said, "Hey, we've got your aunt has this old accordion,
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what an accordion was, I just knew that I had never heard of it. So I thought it had to be totally cool. So I said, yes, I'll take that. So we went up to my grandmother's house where they'd stored the accordion, and I got it, and I looked at it, and I was like, oh. And I just started learning how to play it. So that was when I was around 10 years old.
Wow.
And then when I got to be about 12, I was watching TV, and I saw Jerry Lee Lewis on the TV. And I was like, okay. The piano, that's what I want to do after I'd heard him do that.
Yeah.
So I kept the accordion around, but after that it was all about Jerry Lee Lewis. And for that period of time, all through my high school years, I'd say my three musical idols at that point. There was a lot of stuff I listened to, but if you really distilled it down, and this is a great little trio of figures here, because try to imagine them in the same room together. Jerry Lee Lewis, Freddie Mercury, and Frank Zappa.
That's an amazing trio in my mind. I would love to
imagine
just
a conversation
exactly on a wall there. Yeah,
totally. So and that's where I was totally into those three folks. And then I got into college, and I was going to be an English teacher. I didn't really plan on being a musician out at large. and they had a jazz department.
Yeah.
And I kind of would go into the little practice rooms in between classes and whatever, and I just play. And one of the teachers kind of poked his head in and said, "You know, do you ever think about playing jazz?" And I said, "Not really." He says, "Well, you ought to sign up for something." I said, "Sure. How hard can it be?" You know. So
Little did you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then I got really super focused into jazz, and then after that, you know, I just went out into the world and started to play, and I've done just about every gig you can think of, and if there's one we can think of I haven't done, I'm gonna try to go do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You have played everywhere. That's why I wanted you to come in, is because, I mean, I can't go anywhere without them saying, you know, Todd Hildreth was here, or Todd Hildreth something.
No,
it's always Todd Hildreth is in the conversation, no matter wherever I go musically.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, but you've also done a lot of cool gigs. Not only did you travel at all with music, you've played outside of Louisville
Well,
too,
King
right?
Kong did some nice tours. We
Right.
did a couple European tours. We did a couple tours of the states, sometimes the eastern states, and we did one longer tour of the western states. That's most of the touring I did was with King Kong, and then occasionally, like I just played up in Reno, Nevada, or down in Reno, I guess, or over in
Right.
Reno.
Right, I know. By the way, that's always a pet peeve of mine. I never correct people.
Right.
But anytime somebody's like, I'm going to come up when they live down, or when they live up and I'm down,
That's
then I'm
right.
always like, yeah, no, you're coming down from
That's right.
Indianapolis. You're
That's
not
right.
coming up.
North
from
is up
right.
and south is
yeah,
up.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, there was a jazz educators convention that I played at there, and was a featured performer there, and that was super hip. And otherwise, I'm just kind of in the region.
Yeah. Well, I love it. You all play up at Knock Bar a lot, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Squeeze Bot.
Squeezebot,
right?
yeah.
Tell me how you formed Squeeze Bot, because I love that name.
Okay. So, you know, I told you about how I started on the accordion and then just got more into the piano. And so I was doing a lot of piano work, but I'd really started to miss the accordion. And one of the things, there's certainly the novelty to accordion over keyboard, but there's also, it's the return to an acoustic instrument, because trained as a piano player, doing so many gigs on a keyboard, and it's fine, but it's not the same, you know. So I got interested in accordion again, and just thought, well, man, I want to do some stuff, something kind of cool,
Yeah.
not what you would expect. And so the original lineup of Squeezebot was accordion, guitar, bass, and drums. And I
Okay.
just kind of thought of it as like a saxophone would lead a group. And so the first few gigs, that's how we played. And then there was a gig where I knew the guitar player, and I called Mick Sullivan. Mick Sullivan, who
Right.
is in Fire the Saddle at that point. And he plays guitar, but he said, you know, if you're playing accordion, why don't you let me play banjo? And I said, well, sure, man, bring the banjo in, play a couple tunes. He goes, no, man, let me play banjo all night. So,
All right.
I said, oh, let's try it, you know,
Sure.
what can happen? So the banjo worked, man. We just loved it. So then it became accordion, banjo, bass,
Yeah.
and drums. And then once we had the accordion and banjo, I said to the bass player, I said, look, no offense, but if we find a guy who can really play the tuba, we're totally kicking you out. You know,
The sousaphone. We need a sousaphone up in our band.
that's what we needed. So
I'm a big
and-
fan of anything that's odd, especially putting two odd instruments together.
Oh, yeah.
When we were doing when I was producing the Hillbilly Swagger record with Beverly McClellan, rest in peace, we decided to mix a 1962 Farfisa with beats from an iPad.
Yes.
Go old school meets new school, and it
Yeah.
worked. We were like, "This is the weirdest thing ever," you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm a big fan of that
Yeah,
mashing up things.
it's one of my favorite things to do musically is to try to combine, you know, existing
Unexpected,
elements
yeah.
in unexpected ways. Yeah, so we found a tuba player, and then we had accordion, banjo, tuba, and drums. And then there was this one day where our drummer called at the last minute right before rehearsal, and he said, oh, I forgot, you know, I left my drums in this warehouse, and it's not going to be able to get them in time for this rehearsal. And I said, well, man, don't worry about it. Just come over, and, you know, even if you just play on a phone book, everything will be okay.
Yeah.
So he comes over, and he looks over in the corner. He says, well, what is that? And I said, oh, that's this drum set I got for my son for his 3rd birthday.
Yeah.
Little bitty kid's drum set.
Oh yeah, I love those things.
And my son, he was one of these kids, like, he wouldn't leave a drum set alone.
Cool. He's a smart kid.
Well, yes, until I bought him one, and he played it for 5 minutes and never touched it again.
Oh man.
You know how that goes.
Yeah.
So anyway,
There's still hope, though.
yeah,
There's still hope.
there is still
Always.
hope. Always hope. So anyway, he looks at the drum set and he says, "Well, let me just play that little toy drum set." And we said, "Okay." And there was just something about the timbre of this, and it wasn't really a toy drum set.
Yeah.
You could change the heads on it and tune it and all
Yeah.
that, but it was made for kids.
Yeah.
And we're
So
like,
it was a
"Man."
Ludwig one because I teach a lot, and of course I've seen those.
I think it was like an off-brand, kind of a knockoff brand.
Yeah.
But still a decent set.
PCP
Yeah.
or something
Exactly.
like that, or whatever those PDPs or Canon or those Sears catalog ones.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
Yeah.
But anyway, he played it, and just the timbre and sound of that set was like, man, this works better than like a standard drum set.
Right.
So we kept the toy drum set. So then we went accordion, banjo, tuba, and what we call the tiny drums.
Yeah.
And
Well, I love that.
yeah, and we just do we do everything except what you would think we're gonna do. If you walked into the room and saw those instruments and you're like, oh, I know what they're gonna play. Well. No, that's exactly what we're up to. Is exactly what you think we wouldn't play.
Yeah,
So
that's perfect. I remember when I first met Steve Cooley. He was playing with, they still have the band Hog Operation.
yes,
All right, and I saw them at the basement of Baritones. At the time, it was Baritones, which is now is the Barrett Bar. It was the basement underneath, and I remember walking in and going, "Oh, a banjo! Oh, this is gonna be cool." Because my family were all bluegrass musicians, so I'm used to all that like Appalachian, kind of like
totally.
traditional bluegrass type stuff. And I walk in, and he's got Screaming John Hawkins there, and I can't remember who the bass player was, but it was the whole group that's still there together, Larry and all of them.
Yeah.
And they were playing Prince's "You Sexy MFer."
yeah.
And I was like, what is this?
Yep.
You didn't expect to hear that on a banjo,
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
worked, and it
Oh.
was brilliant, and I still remember it to this day,
Yeah, especially if it's Steve Cooley.
Oh, it's Steve Cooley. Yeah, he was in here last week.
Oh,
and,
nice.
He had some great stories to tell about, just everything he's done in his everyday life and travels, since he's been playing music. He cracked me up, though. I said, "How did you get your start playing banjo?" And he said, "Well, I was watching Beverly Hillbillies, and I heard that banjo part and was like, yeah, that's what I want to do."
Oh yeah, and there was a Beverly Hillbillies episode where Flat and Scruggs came in and played probably a couple of them, I think.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about Hee Haw.
Yeah,
I used to run that in syndication and
watched
television.
a lot of Hee Haw.
Me too.
Yeah.
In fact, you'll love this. One of the tracks on the Hillbilly Swagger record is called "Drop a Trailer on 'Em," and it was it was an homage to The Wizard of Oz, where they dropped the house on the lady, because we were like, but we're hillbillies, so we would drop trailers.
Totally.
It hooks the skit from Hee Haw. The "Oh Where Are You Tonight? Why Did You Leave Me Here All Alone?"
Right.
It hooks that in a hip hop song, which is kind of a mashup of Crazy, which I told you I love.
Totally.
Yeah. When it comes to the artistic side of music, have you put out CDs and stuff like that? Do you write your own stuff?
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
I want to talk a lot about that, because that's where I'm most fascinated by music
Oh, cool.
as an artistry.
Yeah. Well, like when I got out of college, I just went into the world and started playing, and so a lot of what I do is musician for hire. I show up and say, "What are you trying to do
Side
here?"
playing,
and,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sideman and that kind of thing, and that's great. It's taught me a lot. But I also wanted, and especially this was as I got out of college and I was looking at some of the interesting scene that was around the Tooligan scene, and in the 90s, there was a lot of interest in original music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of great music coming out of Louisville at that
Totally.
time. I just had Love Jones Cats in here.
Oh, yeah.
Barry Thomas. He talked a lot about the 90s music scene. We've talked about Squirrel Bait with Peter Searcy. We talked about Slint. All of those bands were coming out of Louisville, and I'm not even from Louisville, so I'm just trying to educate
Right.
myself on the history of of Louisville music.
Yeah.
And I've been here for 21 years now, so I consider myself a Louisvillian. But, you know, when it comes to like 80s music, original
Right.
music that was coming out here, I wasn't around then.
Yeah.
So I didn't move here until 99, so I didn't really get hit to the music scene until the early 2000s.
Yeah.
But it seems to me, through working for Moms, I mean, we've had an amazing run at some original stuff that has gone nationwide.
Yeah.
Just yesterday, or a couple of days ago, I was educated on Lionel Hampton. Do you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So Lionel Hampton, they consider him like the godfather of like vibraphone
Yes.
jazz, right? We played an instrumental track of him a couple days ago on this just random jazz, you know, vinyl, where he was playing piano, and it was mind blowing. These runs that he was doing, it sounded like, you know, Flight of the Bumblebees almost.
Oh, yeah.
It was even more intense than Flight of
Yeah.
the Bumblebees. The runs.
Yeah, he had an amazing technique and an amazing groove, you know, which are
Yes.
really, and then the longer he played, the more creative he got. You
Yeah.
know, this is one thing I really love about Lionel Hampton.
Yeah, Lionel Hampton is awesome. And then yesterday, somebody gave me a book on Lionel Hampton, not knowing that I had just been educated on him. So I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to read this book." You know, it's the one with him. I think it's called Hemp or something like that. Hamp. Oh,
Hamp, yeah, that's what they call him, yeah.
H-A-M-P. Yeah, it's hard to read the writing on it, but it makes more sense to be Hamp since his name is Hampton.
So-
But he's holding the vibraphone sticks. You know, he's got his arms crossed, and talks about his career all through Louisville into L.A. and all that stuff.
Yeah,
So.
he got an honorary doctorate from Bellarmine University when I was a freshman there. So I guess it was '85 or something like that, and brought him in, and he played with his group and got his little honorary doctorate.
Wow.
And there was a little signed picture from him hanging up in Bellarmine for the longest time.
Yeah, so you got to see him live?
I did.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that mind blowing?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I
He's
bet.
a legend, or
I
was.
bet. Well, we're going to take a short break. I am live with Todd Hildreth, and you're locked on to LRS102.com. Do you remember the band The Lemonheads?
I do.
Yeah, they did this badass version of Mrs. Robinson, and we're going to spin it right
Oh, yeah.
now. You're locked on to the Walrus Louisville's Rock Stream. It's Rick Derringer with Rock and Roll Hoochie Q here on LRS102.com. I am Jen Yates. You're locked on to Jyneration Nation, and I am joined by the amazing Todd Hildreth. How you doing, Todd?
Great.
Fantastic. So happy to have you in the studios.
Love it.
Love it that you have so much history with music in Louisville. We were just kind of talking about this. I really enjoy all your projects over the years, and we're going to spin some of your music here in a little bit from your original projects and such. But I wanted to go talk about a little bit about the artistic side of music and how you go about like writing, creating. When did you first get into writing your own stuff?
I experimented with writing a bit in college. I didn't really come up with a whole lot that stayed. When I really got more into writing is when we formed Java Men back in the 90s. Craig Wagner and Ray Rizzo and myself. And as I was talking about when we were talking about the 90s and how original music was so popular here in Louisville, and we came from a rock background, but also had these kind of jazz sensibilities. And in Java Men, we really wanted to think of ourselves as an original band. We just happened to be jazz guys, so we did the jazz thing, but we also really tried to market ourselves to the like original crowd. So we would play Tooligans, right next to a punk band. We would purposely want to get out there and do that. And that's when I really, started doing a lot more writing.
Yeah.
Especially for Java Men.
Who all was in Java Men? Because that's a pretty famous band around here. Around these parts, I think everybody knows who the Java Men are. If they don't, they should.
They should. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I played Hammond organ in that, and then Craig Wagner played guitar. Ray Rizzo played drums.
Right. Ray's been in. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Oh, man, he was a great interview. I love to talk to Ray Rizzo.
Oh, yes. Yeah, Ray's he's got more stories than Craig and I combined.
Yeah. And I need to get Craig in here.
Oh, you totally
Remind me to hit Craig next.
Yeah, because he can talk about all kinds of music.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, and then we decided to be an all original instrumental jazz group, and to throw ourselves out there and to really market ourselves, to the Of course, anybody could obviously listen, but we really actively market ourselves as an originals band.
Yeah.
And so it worked out really well.
Yeah, that's so wild. And then you put out did you put out records as Java Men?
We put out 3 CDs.
That's right.
Yeah, 3 CDs.
And when you write, do you write by yourself usually, or do you like to collaborate writing?
I have actually never collaborated except in the Elton John, Benny Taupin way. The one person does lyrics and one person does music completely. I have not actually written a piece of music with somebody else.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I have almost always collaborated and never done it, and I'm just now doing it by myself for the first time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird how we're like flip-flopped in that sense, you know? I find whatever I write to be very personal.
Yeah.
Usually it comes from usually I can only write when I'm very emotional and upset or angry.
Oh.
That's the only 2 times I can usually write, or I feel like I should write to kind of get it out, you know, as music. I use mine as my own therapy basically, because it's the cheapest therapy you can have. You know what I mean? Sit down and write a song about somebody to get some closure. So I feel like, because it's so intimate to me, it's always been hard to just do it myself, you know, and not get somebody else's perspective. But now it's kind of weird, you know, getting reclusive and then just writing yourself.
Yeah, there's so many different processes for different folks.
Right. And so when you sit down to write a song, do you usually start with music, or do you usually start with lyrics, or is the process different every time?
Well, I'm not much of a lyricist, so anything I've written that's had lyrics on it, somebody else has provided the lyrics. I've never been
Mostly
able to
music.
put much down as far as words. I wrote stories when I was younger, but in terms of lyrics, I never was able to write something that I could look at and think, I want other people to hear this.
Well, it's very intimate. Like I said, it's intimate. You're letting somebody to see the inside of you.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I find it interesting because usually, you know, songwriting, lyrics are poems, basically.
Sure.
And I've taken a lot of classes on things like songwriting and worked with so many other people who are really good at it that taught me things.
Yeah.
That, you know, it's just an interesting process, but the lyrics in themselves, it's almost like you have to say as much as possible in as little wording as possible.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And for, you know, if you've ever hung around great songwriters, you're just like, wow, how did they do that?
Sure.
I had the honor of meeting Bonnie Hayes. I don't know if you know who she is. When I was in LA. She's the songwriting professor at Berklee School of Music, and she wrote several hits for Bonnie Raitt. Love Letter being one of them. Some of her like heartstringy ones, you know, that were huge hits for her. And she wrote for other people. And Melissa Ferrick studied under her. Melissa Ferrick's a big name in the women's music scene. She is an amazing songwriter. She's also a songwriting professor at Berklee School of Music. And I got to hang out with those two, you know, and just was in awe because of all the stuff that they had done, you know, and talking to them about their songwriting process. And everybody's so different, you know. For me, a lot of times I will just see something in my everyday life, and then I'll write it down on my little notes in my phone, and then when I'm trying to pull from stuff, I'll go back and check those lyrics and be like, what did I write down that I was influenced by? Okay, let's take that and make it into something, you know, and whatnot. Yeah. I love a hook, so of course I'm more hip hop kind of influenced. I call myself like a crossover between musically. You know, I was heavily influenced by the punk scene, right?
Yeah.
And the rock and harder rock. Also that 90s chicks angst music, you know, when Tracy Bonham was coming out, flipping off her mom. And you had Ani DeFranco calling out people, you know, F you. And then you had like the Joan Jets, you know, not giving a damn about their bad reputation. I'll give money to charity.
There you go.
But, you know, I was heavily influenced by those styles of music growing up. And then, of course, hip hop. I had Grandmaster Flash's The Message when it first came out. When Debrat was out, I had her stuff. Queen Latifah, when she released her earlier stuff, you know. And then along the way, like the Salt and Peppers and the Little Kims and the, you know, because I was always a rhythm-based instrument, mostly.
Yeah,
and I was influenced by those two styles. So I feel like when I write, it's almost a mashup of that punk, 80s punk, 90s punk, chick angst meets the hip-hop stuff. You know what I mean? And it's a weird clash, as you say.
Yeah.
But and I also love, I always was influenced by rap later on. Eminem was a big influence. I loved him, and I love how he can just say whatever he wants, and he plays a character. I like to sometimes pretend I'm a character.
Sure.
And just kind of go that route. Beastie Boys, huge influence. Run DMC, huge, What were your main influences when you were growing up? Was it mostly jazz-based, or was it, you said rock and roll a little bit, right?
Yeah. Now, for me, my first real awakening was the earliest rock and roll, the Jerry Lee Lewis and the Fats Domino, Chuck Berry.
All the greats.
And these guys. And what that did was led me back to the blues guys who, influenced them.
Right.
Big Joe Turner and Memphis Slim and John Lee Hooker and all the boogie woogie cats,
Yeah.
And it took me... and then, of course, I told you, I was way into Queen and Frank Zappa and these folks.
Man, Zappa? We could spend the whole day talking about him.
Oh, I know.
I'm a huge Zappa fan.
Yep.
I love how he mashed up all these weird time signatures, and I've read books on him. I just really love his artistry. He was not scared to put himself out there. Anybody who takes a picture of themselves naked on a toilet as their poster and merch is pretty awesome, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, he was quite a musical mind he had there. So I really like that. But what eventually led me to jazz was that when I really kind of came from these old blues guys, and I would hear the jazz and I would think, well, I kind of liked what they did there, but then they lost me over there. And it took me a while to get into it. Here's what I love to tell people.
Sure.
There's a pianist, Ramsey Lewis.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm probably a freshman in high school, and the first jazz I heard that I really liked was actually on the radio, and it was a beer commercial, and it just said, "Here's Ramsey Lewis for," and I don't remember the beer, Schlitz or Blatz or something, one of those crazy beers that hipsters like to wear.
That's so funny. I haven't heard that one in a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and he played this like little 15-second thing, and it had all these bluesy things, and it had this other stuff, and I only heard it once in my life. This is one of those things where you just hear this one thing once. I never have not been able to find it on YouTube or anything like that.
Yeah.
But man, it woke me up.
Yeah.
And
so it was kind of like a jingle, really, for beer.
Totally.
Yeah. And you heard it one time?
I heard it one time.
It's crazy how music can influence you. My earliest memories of childhood are not visuals, they're auditory.
Yeah.
Where it's like I remember the first thing I heard musically before I really remember almost anything visually.
Yeah.
And, I probably was 3,
Yeah.
And so it's crazy how you can go back in memories like that.
Have you ever gone back, got on YouTube and gone back to these shows you used to watch as a kid to see if you remembered the theme song correctly?
Oh no, but I want to.
Oh, it's
Pee-wee's Playhouse, or like what would you go back to?
Well,
mine would be Scooby-Doo.
I'm a little older, so I would have to go back to like the early 70s.
Yeah.
So little cartoons I'd watch.
Like a Howdy Doody type thing, or Captain Kangaroo.
Well, Captain Kangaroo for sure.
Yeah,
Captain Kangaroo and all these Warner Brothers things, the Herculoids and the Kids from Caper and King Kong and Land of the Lost. And
that's a classic.
Yeah.
One
day I just decided, do I remember? And I was like 95%. In terms of the way the melody went, all the little instrumental things in between, it was pretty cool.
I was going to say mine would probably, I was thinking, you got me really thinking. Mine would definitely be Scooby-Doo. That was one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
I also loved the original Batman with Adam West.
Oh, my gosh.
That was one of my all-time favorite, like, growing up, like, shows to watch. Hee-Haw, obviously, was a huge one because in my household we were country. It was, I'm not from Louisville, so I come from a town of, like, 3,600 people down near Lake Cumberland. So lots of farmland, lots of country influence. So definitely Hee-Haw. And Fraggle Rock I always loved later on because that is a great theme song. There's just so many. In fact, when I was first working in radio, I used to use TV theme songs underneath my beds and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it was back when it was like Twin Peaks and Moonlighting and like all those type of shows. Yeah. There's been some great theme songs in the day. Facts of Life, obviously another one. And I love the Golden Girls theme song. And I was going to tell you the story. You've probably played Lincoln Elementary before for
I
the
have,
kids.
yeah, totally.
Me too. I usually play it like once a year, and I love that gig just because you get to, kids, they'll tell you the truth. That's what I love about them. They're very honest, and
Yep.
they do not mince what they think about your music and your playing and all that stuff. So I always love to play for kids because you can get a very honest opinion about your skills.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, we were playing there, and we always ask if anybody wanted to request anything. Well, we got like 50 requests for the Golden Girls theme song.
The Golden Girls.
The Golden Girls theme song, which blew me away because these
Totally.
kids are what, like 6, 7, 8,
Yeah.
maybe? So I thought, man, I bet it's like, because my age people are usually the mothers, and I'm actually much older now than the moms of the kids that I teach.
Right.
So I thought, oh, well, that kind of makes sense because the Golden Girls are so popular. Their parents are probably at home watching that show, and then they're
yeah.
picking it up. So we ended up playing the Golden Girls theme song like once every set, a couple times, and those kids went crazy. And at the end, they send you thank you cards. Every kid will sit down and sign a thank you card to the band, and then they'll mail it to you in a big package.
Right.
So we would go through all these, like hundreds of these thank you cards from these kids with crayon drawings, and they were all so cute. They draw your little drum set and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, totally.
But every single one of them, almost every single one of them said, "We just loved you playing the Golden Girls theme song." And I thought, how cool are those kids at Lincoln Elementary?
That's amazing.
Yeah, it blows my mind how that can stick with you. Music just
yeah.
sticks. It is the universal language for
yeah.
sure. I'm trying to think. So we come up through Java Man.
Yeah.
We come up through King Kong.
King Kong, yeah.
Squeezebot.
Squeezebot.
You do all the jazz stuff. You've always been playing with jazz cats every time I've seen you. What else do you do?
Well, I've got my steel drum band now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Let's talk about that because I love a steel drum.
Tiki Todd and the Limbo Maniacs. Yeah. So
Oh, okay. I saw that and
Yeah.
was wondering what that was.
That's me.
All right. Tell me how you formed that band.
Okay. Well, there was for years there was a guy named Sam Harris, a local guy.
Okay,
And-
I took drum lessons from Sam
Oh,
Harris.
there you go.
I dated his daughter.
Oh.
Yeah, and I spent many Thanksgivings and Christmases with them. I know Nancy very well. I love that family.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, anyway, Sam played the steel drum, and so he did these gigs and these kind of calypso Caribbean gigs, and I played keys on there. And Sam sadly has passed away.
Right.
And I just ended up missing that sound, and as you don't hear it a whole lot around here, I know that there's I think there's, aside from me, I think there's one or two other folks who do steel drum, but I'd really missed the sound, and so
It's a hard instrument. I mean, you've got to know where the notes are, and
they come from the factory. Like when you get one factory made, it'll have the notes written on it, but what you do, the notes kind of fade.
Do you know
as
where you don't have Sam's steel guitar, do you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Not steel guitar, but I mean steel drum.
Yeah. I don't have Sam's. I had a.
I wonder where that ended up. Nancy may still have
Nancy
it.
told me she sold it to somebody. I
Okay.
think. But anyway, so this thing shows up in a box, and I pull it out, and I text a friend of mine who books a lot of music. This is what happened.
Sure.
So I text her and say, "Hey, I've got a steel drum now. I'm going to learn it. So at some point, if anything comes up, let me know." She texts right back and says, "What are you doing on Memorial Day, Labor Day weekend, which was literally a month away? I have a 4-hour gig, and I had just taken the thing out of the box."
Yeah.
And of course, what did I say? I said, "I'll take it." So I had to spend a month like just shedding and shedding and shedding. And the gig worked out fine and worked out pretty well. And after that, I really wanted to do this thing. And Tiki Todd tries to do the same kinds of thing that Squeezebot does, where you're gonna get the calypso sound, and you're gonna get kind of this stuff. But we also like to kind of throw out there some covers that you wouldn't expect. Bowie.
Yeah, I was gonna guess Prince.
Yeah, Prince.
Prince on steel drum would be interesting.
Disco worked great on this.
Does it really? Like ABBA or like
does.
Giorgio Moroder stuff?
All kinds of stuff. Because it's a happy, danceable kind of sound. So almost anything that seems kind of happy and danceable, you can throw on the steel drum.
There's it's hard to sound angry on a steel drum.
But and you can exploit the irony of playing kind of an angry tune on
Right.
the steel drum. We do back to black, you know?
Oh yeah, you should do "You Oughta Know," the Alanis Morissette, the angry one.
Yes.
That'd be hilarious.
A whole set of songs that are supposed
Yeah.
to be angry, yet I completely subvert them by playing them on the steel drum.
You know what's funny though is we always love an angry songwriter. We always do as society, and then I always say this about the female angst stuff. It's like once they get happy and get their family, you know, have a family, and then they're all happy. We don't really prefer their music.
Their muse is gone, you know?
Exactly. It's almost like we need that emotion. And I talk a lot about this too. You know, the Dixie Chicks can write Earl and put him in the trunk and go kill him off in the river because we don't like how he was hitting our girl.
Right.
Bob Marley can shoot a sheriff, you know. Johnny Cash can shoot a man in Reno just to watch him die, you know, and we're for that. We're all like, yes. For some reason, we relate to that, and I don't know if it's just because we can't naturally do that in our everyday life, or that's just the reason I love art. You can literally do anything in your art, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of song lyrics, obviously, and I just always think it's interesting when, you know, I was working in country radio when the Dixie Chick thing happened. In fact, I was working with them. I was working in country radio when Goodbye Earl came out. And there was this huge upheaval about their song lyrics.
Sure.
Which killed me because, again, you had Johnny Cash way before them shooting a dude. You know, you had all these things back in the day, you know, and it was just interesting about, like, why were they so mad about them, you know? So our program director would come in and be like, you know, be careful about playing them. And then I'd be like playing them 3 times an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because when you're the DJ, you can literally pretty much do what you want unless your boss comes in and tries to get rid of you, you know. And then I ended up working in country radio when the big incident happened. I was working in rock and roll radio, and that's when they were dropping Not Ready to Make Nice. They had to move them over outside of a country music format, more to a pop rock format, you know. And then I just heard they're about to release an album after about 10 or 11 years of a hiatus. So I wish them well. I'm a big fan of them because, you know, they speak their mind. I think they're great players. They really are on their instruments, you know. And Natalie Maines' dad being one of the better steel players around, you know, pedal steel players. I'm a big fan of that. I'm sure you know, like Johnny Berry and...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want to get him up in here, too.
Oh, you definitely need to do that.
Yeah. I love that old school country, you know, and that outlaw country.
Oh, I just did a session with Tyler Lance Walker Gill.
Yeah.
He's got this, you know, kind of honky-tonk thing going on, and we just a week ago, I played on about 3 sessions here. I had to...
Super rad.
Oh, man, I was able to channel some of that old Jerry Lee stuff that got me started in music to begin with. It was amazing.
Yeah. So, Todd, you brought in a CD here for us, and this is, I'm looking at it right now. I love the cover with all the keys. What influenced the cover of this?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Amber Estes Thiemann, who is the singer in Fool's Ghost, and she's been in a number of groups like Sandpaper Dolls and Liberation Prophecy, and she's actually an ex-student from Bellarmine.
Cool.
Very, very talented in the visual and the and visual arts and music.
Oh, I like that you open it up and it's inverted.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so she,
totally cool.
Yeah.
It's people at home can't see it, but it's basically the cover of the Todd Hildreth Trio $1 Million Trooper, and it says with Chris Fitzgerald and Mike Hyman. We want to drop their names. The cover though is like this really cool piano, and you can see all the hammers and what is up top there? It almost looks like. What is this? Is that just part of the
Yeah, that's
imagery?
just more part. That's like the strings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but she did a great job on that image. She always does.
Yeah, nice work. And then when you open it up, it's inverted. It's the same photo inverted. So we're going to spin a track off of this, and then I'm going to follow it up with my favorite King Kong song so that when we come out of it, we can talk a little bit about
cool.
it. Okay,
So
we're going to spin a track off of Todd Hildreth's Trio $1 Million Trooper, and we're going to spin a track called Little Buddy.
Little Buddy.
Yeah. And you're locked on to LRS102.com, The Walrus.
That's the Walrus. Because LRS102.com is a digital station, we can and occasionally do play some songs unedited, raw, and real, the way the artist intended. If this makes you feel uneasy, we apologize. But know that every time we play a song with a swear word in it, we drop some change in the swear jar. Then, once a month, we add it up and make a donation to Positive Change, a Louisville charity that works to help the homeless here in our own town. So we're not playing unedited songs just because we can. We're playing unedited songs because we can make a difference. Remember, the Walrus is cussing for a cause. Yeah, you motherfuckers. LRS102.com, Louisville's rock stream.
Pennsylvania's in the east, California's in the west, but Kentucky is the state that I love the best because the sky is up, earth is down. In between, tornadoes spins around and 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 around. Yes, it's a tornado, gonna touch the ground. It's a tornado, gonna hit the town. Pretty ballerina, pretty ballet moves, looks real pretty with her pretty ballet shoes. First she looks up, then she looks down, then she looks up, and then she spins around and 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 around. Yes, it's a tornado, gonna touch the ground. It's a tornado, gonna hit the town. Listen, people, can you feel the breeze? Better get down and put your head between your knees because you bring me up, you let me down. But when I get mad, tornado spins around and 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 around. Yes, it's a tornado, gonna touch the ground. It's a tornado, gonna hit the town. Tornado is about to hit the hen house. Tornado gonna hit the brown cow. Ohio River tornado is a water spout. Tornado gonna hit the downtown. Tornado.
That's Beck with Peaches and Cream. You're locked on to Jyneration Nation, LRS102.com, the Walrus, Louisville's rock stream. I am joined by the amazing Todd Hildreth. How are you doing, Todd?
Great.
Man, it's been so fun having you up in the studios
Yeah,
today. We've had
thanks so much.
some great conversations. I wish
Absolutely.
you the best of luck with all your musical ventures.
Same to you.
I have the utmost faith in your skills because I've seen you play, and
Thanks.
you're a badass. We'll donate more money to charity.
Oh.
We cuss for a good cause, so you can't hate us here. Yeah, but from Squeezebot to Java Man to King Kong to Todd Hildreth Trio, I'm sure we've left out, what was the other one?
Tiki Todd and the Luminiacs.
Yeah.
And we never talked about Big Mama Thorazine, but
Yeah.
maybe another time.
Big
for
Mama
that.
Thorazine, yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate all those because you just got so much stuff going on, and I love your original stuff because it's
All right.
always. I think that's where the true artistry comes in, is when you're really writing, putting out your own stuff. So I appreciate you coming in. Where can people catch you?
Well, you can
next?
see Squeezebot at Limbo on the 20th of this month.
Okay.
And then we're going to do the Germantown Oktoberfest on the
Ooh,
27th.
cool. I love that.
Yes. We've done that several years in a row, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, and that's the two places. And if they want to catch you online and they want to follow your band,
And
what do
just
they
find
do?
Find us on Facebook.
Well, I love that. That's easy enough, right?
Easy
All
enough.
right. Well, I've been joined by Todd Hildreth, musician extraordinaire, teacher, everything else. Thank you so much for stopping by the Walrus Studios, and we'll try to get Ethan and all those.
get 'em
Mike
all in
Hyman, I
here.
would love to get up in
Oh, yeah.
here.
Totally.
All of the people you do work with. You know, if they have great musician stories, send them my way. So,
Yep.
you have a great day. I appreciate you coming in. All right, you're locked on to LRS102.com.
Swallow my dice.